We now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say good morning and good afternoon, good evening, but never good night and never ever goodbye. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin, and I say hello and how are you to you from the New Life Institutional Baptist Church, located at 8916 South Main Street. We're worshiping with our sister church. They have opened up the doors and invited us in to congregation, but the one church, because the Bible speaks of one Lord, one faith, one baptism, and we are trusting and believing in God that He will make this fellowship, this communion, work and make it multiply and make it spread and make it fruitful, in other words, that the work of God be not hindered. And our friend, the Reverend Dr. Della F. Holliness, is the pastor of the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, and I am just delighted and overjoyed and quite content with how God is working this fellowship out. God has really changed my heart and changed my mind from, the doctrines we received from early, which were testosterone driven, to put it mildly. And but He has allowed me to live long enough to see the folly of my ways, a lot of my earlier beliefs against women preachers and the like is what I'm talking about. And He has allowed me to see the folly of my ways, that which God has sanctified, that callest not thou unclean, is one verb that comes to mind. And then, of course, the two worlds, the world of the male and the world of the female, are really one world in Christ Jesus. For out of one blood God made all people for to dwell upon the face of the earth. Yes, male and female, man and woman. And we need to accept that and work together with that and lay aside all of this misogynistic gospel that a lot of us have not only preached, but we have sought to perpetuate it from generation to generation. And our churches, our congregations are suffering. But enough of that. That's for another day. The offering that you're viewing now is entitled It's Time. It's Time is geared more toward justice, more toward the social justice issues. In other words, I believe in racial equity, if there be such a thing as race. As race is a social concept, then I believe that it should be equity across the board. And whether health equity, housing equity, and a certain educational equity, the three most pertinent, health, education, and welfare. And where you live, your housing, what your proximity to health care, health prevention, health intervention facilities and institutions, and then the educational component, because the educational components are preparing all of the people that will be in the professional and the service fields going forward. And so if you teach falsehood in the educational system, then of course there's going to be falsehood in those people, those personnel who have those certificates, those degrees, and those doctorates. If you taught them wrong, when they come out of them schools, they're going to exercise it wrong. And so we have the proof is in the pudding, the disparity between the health care given to the people who are designated as black as opposed to the health care given to the people who are designated as white in this country. Those being the two major problems that every generation has had to confront, dealing with the amorphous systemic racism that instructs, informs, and influences and effects. Racism has an effect. Systemic racism has an effect. And of course, when we speak of racism in the national context, we're no longer talking about personal bigotry, the personal prejudices on an individual level. No, because why? Those excuse me, prejudices, bigotries, fears have been codified, and so now the people who codified those prejudices and those bigotries and the like, those fears, those xenophobias, if you put that into a system and it becomes a policy, it becomes a practice, now this affects the entire society. So when we talk about the social structure, what's in that social structure is that the bigotry, the bias, the personal bigotry, prejudices and biases of generations gone by are still being taught and still being observed, then no wonder the world is on the brink of destruction. You can't live a lie and expect to prosper. No lie can live forever. Even Dr. Martin Luther King, quoting another great divine, was constantly repeating that you cannot live a lie. No lie can live forever. Jesus said, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And that is what we endeavor now, so more than ever. What I mean to say now, so I'm 75 years old. I'm headed out life's back door, as they say. But I want to leave the record, leave the truth, leave the acknowledgement of the truth for those that are coming behind me, who may well have more time to continue to rectify this world and put truth back into its proper place and drive away the darkness from the hearts of mankind. Don't forget that in the book that Paul wrote to the Ephesian church, he gave a description that fits very well as a description to describe why things are as they are in the society and in the world. He says, therefore, put on the whole armor of God, that you might be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And some people don't believe in the devil, but the Bible teaches the devil. And I believe in the devil, because all the mess I've been involved in had been a devil somewhere. God bless. But Paul goes on to say in this same little book to the church at Ephesus that we wrestle not, and that means you are engaged. If you wrestle, is different from boxing. Wrestling means you are engaged in hand-to-hand combat with an adversary, with a foe, with an antagonist. That wrestling metaphor or symbolizes really the type of warfare which you and I are engaged in. We're engaged in hand-to-hand, close-in combat with the forces of wickedness, the forces of evil. In this 6th chapter of the book of the letter to the Ephesian church, in verse number 12, those are your descriptors. Those let you know the nature of the adversary that you are fighting. Paul says you're not wrestling against flesh and blood. No, he said, but you're wrestling against what? Principalities, against powers. Principalities, that means every ruler, every person that's in charge of whatever is doing their best to advance their career, to advance their ambition, whether they be a county supervisor or a city council person, or whether they are a bureaucrat working behind a desk in an office somewhere, or they are the heads of banks or the clerks of banks, or whether they are the heads of the news media, or whether they are the anchors on the anchor desk, or the reporters or the journalists out in the field. These principalities exercise rulership and governance. Don't leave out the teachers. Don't leave out the professors. Don't leave out the lawyers and the judges. No. There's some judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and this judge has ruled before the trial starts, pre-trial. The defense attorneys and the prosecutors get with the judge, and the judge tells them what it is and what it is not going to be, what they can say and what they cannot say. And this judge has said that the prosecutor cannot refer to the people that Kyle Rittenhouse killed. They were victims. But the judge says you cannot refer to those people as victims. So you can refer to them as rioters. You may refer to them as looters. But you may not refer to them in his court, in their court, as victims. And so you can see where these principalities that I'm talking about, that the Bible speaks of, and that Paul is referencing here, you can see the impact that these principalities have. They are not to be ignored. No. You ignore them at your peril. You have to take all of these type of things, whether it's attorney general or district attorney or deputy district attorney, or whatever principality they may be. They got some power, limited though it may be, but they're going to exercise that power that they have, which is what Paul is attempting to make the Ephesian church aware of. You're wrestling not against the Roman soldier. You're not wrestling against the person who sits behind the desk and collects the taxes. No, you're wrestling with a machine. You're wrestling with a system. And that makes up the entire social structure in which you were born, in which you grow, in which you live, in which you are educated, in which you thrive, or in which you suffer, in which you get your health care, or which you get your house, or don't get your house, or get your apartment, or don't get your apartment, whether you live well-housed or unhoused. These principalities. And that includes, of course, don't dare leave out the police, because who is the tip of the spear? It is not the Marines and the U.S. Army and the Air Force. The tip of the spear is always the policeman. The policeman comes first. Policeman comes first. And if the policeman get where he can't handle it, or he or she can't handle it, then naturally they're going to call in the National Guard and the other armed services to put down what they call a riot or rebellion or insurrection or revolt or whatsoever the case may be. Well, let me continue. Again, verse 12, for we, speaking of the believer, wrestle not against flesh and blood. No sense of getting mad at that person, that woman, or that man behind the desk. They're not the problem. The person who put them there and who gave them that authority, the system, the machine, the strategy, the tactic that put them there, that is what you are confronting. This person is merely what? A representative or a symbol. Dr. Georgia Grew gives the illustration that when her son was denied entrance to a theater because he didn't have some type of ID that the ticket clerk asked him to present, but did not ask his white friend to ask. He made such a noise, of course, they threw him out the theater and kept his money. Well, he told his mama, or his mama wasn't there, he told his sister. His sister said, look, watch this here. She got on the phone, she called the theater and said, I hear you have a racial problem down there. Let me speak to the supervisor. Well, they don't want the supervisor to get it. They said, can we handle it? They said, no, it's a racial problem. What is your name? And like that. And when they finally got the one of the supervisor or the person that owned the theater, the manager, and they said, and so she said, now I hear that was a racial incident at your theater this evening, but I just wanted to get your side of the story before I turn it over to the newspaper. As a result, they didn't want that type of publicity. The lady said they gave her son 20 free tickets. 20, you hear me? And so in battling the system, you can't just deal with your anger, no sense of venting your frustration and your anger on the person that's sitting in that seat or at the desk or in that uniform. No, you got to reach beyond them and start dealing with the system itself. I know I'm stating that rather clumsily, but I want you to get the idea as what Paul was saying. You're not wrestling with flesh and blood. The person you're looking at, the person that is opposing you, is not the person that's really opposing you. What is opposing you is what? The entire system. And in our case, the system of white supremacy, the system of racism, and all of the consequent declensions of various manifestations, all serving that same system. Paul talks about principalities. That's the people who have delegated authority, and then powers. Okay, now the powers are the ones that delegate the authority to the little fellas and the little women that you are confronting. You see, you call them Uncle Tom and Aunt Jane and all of that, but they're not doing that on their own. When you go down to you get turned down for a mortgage, you better find out who behind that. Not the agent that you're talking to or the bank clerk that you are dealing with. No, you got to get back behind there and make old Satan take his mask off and turn you a real, true answer as to why your loan was denied. It wasn't because you didn't fill in a space on a piece of paper. No, it goes far deeper than that. I wish I had a witness, and I trust that I can explicate or give you a good exposition of what Paul is saying in our real time. But remember, everything that was written in the scriptures, the things that were written beforehand are written for our comfort or instruction, that we through the patience and comfort, instruction and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. I know I stated that quite poorly, but you get the idea. Paul says we're wrestling, yes, we're fighting, we're in hand-to-hand, face-to-face, person-to-person combat, mano-a-mano combat, but really it's not the person you're holding that's holding you back. Help me, somebody. It's the system that has empowered and authorized this person to hold you back, or to restrict, or to restrain your forward progress. Paul talks about powers, and of course you have to unpack this principality, unpack this power. It's a power that gives the principalities their authority. Some of y'all may be not old enough, but during the World War II, when the war was over, and they began to bring the principals before the courts, Nuremberg Court and the like, The Hague and all of that. A lot of the soldiers, a lot of the officers that had performed some of the most bestial and cruel and brutal experiments, inhumane to no end. They said, well, I was just doing my job. I was just following orders. And these orders come from these powers. These powers give orders to the principalities. The Federal Reserve, in other words, or the Bank of America, or the J.P. Morgans, give the decision to the various lesser persons that work for them, principalities, and they come back and tell you, sorry, your loan was turned down, and they were authorized to tell you that. George Floyd with his knee, Derek Chauvin with his knee on George Floyd's neck was a very apt symbol of how this system is holding us down, holding us back. Yes, somebody got their foot on your neck. And you need to acknowledge that, because that's the only way you're going to begin to get that foot off your neck. Derek Chauvin kept his knee upon George Floyd's neck beyond the point when the paramedics could have revived him if Derek Chauvin had gotten up off of his neck a minute or so sooner. But Derek Chauvin kept his knee on George Floyd's neck until it was beyond calling him back. That's how the system is taught to operate. He was taught that in class. That class was taught by somebody who believed in that type of tactic to be used to keep control of the public. Not the elite public, not the rich public, but the public that they are authorized to police. Remember, the police authority started in slavery, and the police were authorized and empowered. They were given badges, they were given pieces of paper, and told to observe, to control, to keep your eye on, to do surveillance, to reconnoiter the slaves, so that the slave owners, the slaveocracy, the slave society, the slave craft, the slave guild could rest comfortably in their beds at night, because they had these lesser principalities watching their commodity, their property, so that the property didn't get up and run away in the middle of the night. Begging the question, if the property was so happy, then why would the property get up and run away? Something to think about, and I'm sure it was thought about. And so that was the beginning of the police power. The slave patrols, they could patrol the back roads at night and the main roads in the daytime and the like. They watched the swamps, they watched the woods, and they watched the slaves as they labored. And they were empowered to fall upon the slaves and to beat the slaves, to discipline the slaves, make them work harder, make them produce more and more cotton. And if they didn't produce enough cotton, then of course it was the police power that whooped them in the evening. And then when a slave ran away, the police power, these bounty hunters, were empowered to go find that slave and bring that slave back wherever they were, in whatever other state, whatever other city, and whatever other condition that the law empowered the slave catcher, which was the police power, to go and get that person, that slave, which was not regarded as a person, and the slave could not testify, it could not resist, he could offer no defense that any court would hear, because the police power said you were guilty and you belong to Mr. John, and you're way up here in Washington, D.C., but we're taking you way back down to Dixie and putting you back in slavery with Mr. John. So the police power in this country grew out of the slave patrols. And so that's why Paul, in writing about what you're fighting against, says that he spoke of the word darkness, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Well, ignorance is darkness, and illiteracy is darkness. And in our country, in the United States of America, it was against the law to teach a person held in slavery to read. And then at the end of slavery, it was against the law for a white student and a black child to be in the same class, in the same school. They developed what they call separate schools, separate education, separate educational tracks, one for the Negro children and one for the white children. And so the darkness has continued because they taught white supremacy in those schools. That was whether it was a grammar school, elementary school, a high school, a college, a university of higher education. It didn't matter. If you're teaching a lie, and then you're perpetuating that lie from grammar school, from kindergarten, all the way through the graduate degree. And that is what this word, the rulers of the darkness of this world against spiritual wickedness in high places. That is what you and I are left to confront and to push back and to engage in the battle, in the wrestling match. And that's a very apt metaphor that Paul used in the letter to the Ephesian church. I usually don't get into this type of exposition, but I thought it would be helpful for us at this time. Don't forget to continue your prayer work, your prayer labor, because you may say it ain't making no difference. Yes, it does. Prayer changes things. We wouldn't have got this far without the prayers of our ancients, our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and grands and great-grands and great-great-great-grands, all the way back down to the slave ship. If they had not prayed and had not believed that God would make a difference, then we wouldn't be where we are today. We ain't where we ought to be, don't get me wrong, but we're a long ways from where we was. And as we close out today, I want to encourage you to continue your prayer life. Take care of yourself, take care of your health, be joyful, seek the Lord, pray much, give God the glory. And to my brothers and sisters that are working in these jobs, thank God they're beginning to pay more money than they used to, and keep the pressure on, make them pay what his job is worth, make them pay more money to get the job done here than they pay over yonder. Because you ain't over yonder. You got high prices here, and you need money in order to meet your obligations. So pray and protest and ask for a raise. Help me, somebody. And if they don't want to pay you, as I always say, this is the perfect time. If they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. Let this ship sit out there. God bless you. Thank you, Doc. We out of here.
My good days, all of my good days. I weigh my bad days, yes I do. I weigh my bad days. I just say thank you, Lord.